Hello, I'm Cupin, and you are watching Rappler. Today, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to deliver his second State of the Nation address just hours after the 19th Congress resumes session after a 2 month break. It's pretty long, but today will be an even longer day for Philippine politics, and most people here at the Batasan Pambansa complex, as you can see behind me, you can maybe hear behind me, last minute preparations are going on, are happening here in Batasan Pambansa. But don't worry because we will be walking you through the events of this morning and this afternoon. And luckily, joining me here today are two of my colleagues who cover the 19th Congress. Also here at Batasan is Dwight de Leon. He covers the House of Representatives, while all the way in Pasay City is at the Senate is Bonz Magsambol. Good morning, gentlemen. Let's talk first about what's happening this morning. But maybe before we talk about yung mangyayari in a few hours, a few minutes actually from now, let's recap what happened during the first year of the 19th Congress. Dwight, Bon, whoever wants to go first?
Ako, I'll start siguro kasi
Yeah.
usually kapag may bill na pinapasa sa House, tsaka palang dumidiretso sa Senate. And we know naman na
Mm.
Congress jobs, of course, legislation, and pagdating ng State of the Nation address, you're expecting the President to boast about his legislative progress or yung mga na-accomplish ng kanyang House of Representatives, because we know that the House of Representatives and Congress as a whole is allied with the Marcos administration. So, in the House of Representatives, there are 33 out of 42 priority measures passed by President or passed by Congress. Particularly, ang pinaka-controversial among all of this is the Maharlika Investment Fund o yung Sovereign Investment Fund na umani ng putakte mula sa iba't ibang kritiko. Pero pumasa sa House with an overwhelming majority, more than 200 lawmakers and only 6 voting against the controversial Sovereign Investment Fund. Maliban pa roon, sinasabi ng mga kritiko na ni-railroad yung pagpasa ng panukalang batas dito sa House of Representatives and eventually challenged in the Supreme Court, but it eventually was jumped at Kenya. Last week ay naipasa na ito na pirmahan na ni Pangulong Marcos patungong batas. Maliban pa roon, may mga iba pang pinush yung House of Representatives, katulad na lamang ng charter change, pero it eventually fizzled because of the lack of support din sa Senate. Maliban pa roon, the House of Representatives investigated the rise in onion prices dahil sa mga matunog na issues in the last year, yung surge. Maliban pa sa legislative functions ng House, nagkaroon din ng iba't iba pang kontrobersiya dito sa Kamara. Particularly, yung suspension ni Negros Oriental 3rd District Representative Arnie Teves in connection with being implicated in the killing of Negros Oriental Governor Ruel Digamo, at sinuspende siya ng House dahil kanya raw dinify yung order ng House na bumalik dito sa Pilipinas para i-fulfill yung kanyang mga duties. Siyempre, nagtapos din yung first year ng House doon sa kontrobersiya na mayroong some sort of ouster plot or destabilization efforts against the House leadership. Matunog na pangalan ay si Deputy Speaker Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo daw ang supposedly behind this destabilization effort, which the former president denied, but she was eventually stripped of her deputy or senior deputy speakership post, and eventually Speaker Martin Romualdez came out with a statement that there needs to be attempts or there needs effort na nip in the bud yung mga moves to destabilize the House. Eventually, he has concluded his first year of leadership na all his party mates are, well, in terms of optics, are behind him. And we'll see, pero ngayon naman walang issue or walang ugong-ugong na magkakaroon ng some sort of drama later kapag nagbukas yung session ng House of Representatives. Sa Senate naman dyan, Bonz, anong update in the last year?
Kasi yung nagiging role dito ng Senate is yung mga batas na pinapasa dyan sa House, Senate yung sumasala ito yung sinabi ng mga senador sa atin nung kinausap nga natin sila kung ano ba talaga yung role ng Senado, no? So of course, sinabi ni Senate President Mig Zubiri before na yung first regular session nitong 19th Congress under the Marcos administration was a success. So sinabi niya na the Senate produced a total of 6 measures which were enacted into law, 4 of which are national and 2 were local in scope. So 22 bills are up for the president's signature. So kasama nga dito sa mga sa mga pinasang batas ay yung SIM Card Registration Act, the Act postponing the barangay and sangguniang kabataan elections, and the AFP fixed term code, and of course the controversial Maharlika Act. So ayun nga, sinabi ni Senate President Mig Zubiri before that the Senate does not trade scrutiny for speed, and yet come May, the Senate, the same chamber passed the Maharlika bill for the second and third and final reading on the same day after an 11-hour plenary session. Only 2 members, kung marirecall nyo, only 2 members yung nag-scrutinize nitong Maharlika bill, yung minority bloc, si Senator Risa Ontiveros at si Senator Coco Pimentel. So, of course, hindi naman naging makulay yung nangyari dito sa Senado compared dun sa House. Pero of course, meron ding mga controversies or meron ding kinaharap na mga issues yung ating mga senador. Unang-una dito si Senator Robin Padilla, yung push niya for charter change focusing on economic provision. Of course, this eventually fizzled out due to lack of support or numbers from his colleagues. And of course, he also gone viral for all the wrong reasons. Yung insistence niya, of course, sa pag-i-invite ng House lawmakers dito sa mga Senate hearings natin for Chacha, which is traditionally hindi siya ginagawa talaga ng mga senador. So ito, this prompted Senate President Mig Zubiri to step in. So nag-step in na dito si Senate President Mig Zubiri at sinasabi niya na hindi daw ginagawa talaga ito and it's a matter of interparliamentary courtesy. So hindi talaga pwedeng mag-invite ng mga, traditionally hindi talaga sila nag-i-invite ng mga speaker from House to Senate and then vice versa. So hindi talaga siya nangyayari. But not only that, si neophyte Senator Robin Padilla has also gone viral when he was combing his mustache during a Senate hearing. So kung maaalala nyo, may mga viral videos tayo sa Twitter na makikita natin na nagsusuklay ng bigote si Senator Robin Padilla. So dito, nag-step in na si former Senate President Franklin de Leon at sinabi niya na kailangang i-uphold ng Senado ang integrity nito kasi it's unbecoming of a senator. So, katulad nung nangyari sa House, though ito naman, hindi ito naging maugong, nagkaroon din, of course, ng ouster rumors or destabilization plot against kay Senator Mig Zubiri na sabi nila, papalitan daw ni Senator Cynthia Villar. So, itong rumors na to, sinasabi na nababagalan daw, of course, si President Marcos sa pagpapasa or sa kilos ng Senado sa pamumuno ni Senator Mig Zubiri. But of course, nag-fizzle out din ito at dinipensahan naman ng ibang senador si Senator Zubiri. At sinasabi nila na hindi daw totoo ito and they're satisfied with the performance of Senator Zubiri. But we never know in politics, di ba? Anything can happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll be talking a little more about yung super majority under a President Marcos kasi we've been hinting at it, we've been mentioning it na he does have, or a super majority is allied with him both in the House and in the Senate. And we'll talk more about the dynamics, although more or less nagbigay na si Dwight at si Bonz ng summary of the dynamic. It hasn't been exactly smooth sailing despite having an overwhelming majority in the 19th Congress allied with President Marcos. So that's interesting. So anyway, baka nagtataka kayo kung bakit naka-Philippine nga na attire kami at bakit nagkakagulo nga dito sa House of Representatives. Bukod sa pag-reopen ng session. So that's what's happening actually later. Maybe Dwight or maybe Bonz, you can go ahead and walk us through like what is happening today. Bakit nagkaroon ng 2-month break ang 19th Congress? Dwight, go ahead.
Okay, well, mamaya mag-resume na ng session ng House of Representatives, pati na rin yung Senate. There was a 2-month break. They adjourned Sinedye back in May. This is just the standard schedule of the House of Representatives. Pero standard operating procedure din na bago magkaroon ng State of the Nation address, kailangan mag-reconvene yung both chambers of Congress. So ito na, yung magaganap mamayang 10 a.m., ito yung opening ng second regular session of the House of Representatives and the Senate in the 19th Congress. Dito sa House, inaasahan natin bandang 9:30 magkakaroon ng unveiling ng digital wall doon sa may bandang main lobby kasi before it used to be a physical wall featuring the photos of the congressmen, pero ngayon high-tech na, digital wall na yung meron. So yan yung isa sa mga inaabangan natin. Of course, when the Congress convenes this House of Representatives, we are expecting Speaker Martin Romualdez to deliver a speech, maybe rally his colleagues na ipasa yung mga natitirang priority measures ni President Marcos before the end of the year because he gave a deadline, di ba? And also, isa pa sa mga inaabangan natin, Congressman Erwin Tulfo is expected to make his debut today sa plenary because he entered Congress via the post-election substitution route. It's a controversial method to enter Congress, but he did it anyway. And na-delay lang dahil mayroong disqualification against him that was eventually junked just recently. Maliban pa ron, inaasahan natin, of course, yung security dito sa House ay talagang mataas at dahil pinagandaan ng mga tao yung security procedures. 4 days before the SONA, nagkaroon na ng pre-SONA lockdown. So today lang ito na-open for all the visitors. There is expected to be around 2,000 guests sa SONA mamaya. This is higher compared to last year na nasa around 1,300 lamang. Ang mga inaasahan nating dadalo mamaya includes former presidents, yung mga living former presidents natin, sina former President Joseph Estrada, former President Gloria Arroyo, still Deputy Speaker of course, and the former President Rodrigo Duterte. Yung motive, katulad nga yung suot natin, naka-Philippine na tayo, yung pagkain din na binibigay, Filipino team din. Inaasahan natin na yung isang choir from Tacloban will perform sa opening session this morning. Tapos mamayang hapon, ang kakanta ng national anthem ay si Lara Maiga, classically trained soprano. Siya yung kakanta ng Lupang Hinirang. Tapos, in terms of security, in all across the National Capital Region, ang PNP ay nag-deploy ng over 20,000 cops. Pero within the perimeter of the Batasang Pambansa, nasa around 6,000 officers ay nasa security zone ng Batasang Pambansa. Yung QC, local government unit, nag-deploy din ng kanilang mga traffic enforcers. I think it's around 800. Tapos 375 personnel from the Department of Public Order and Safety. So yung full alert ng PNP, it will be until Tuesday or tomorrow lunch. Samantalang yung AFP naman ay nagpadala ng kanilang mga intel officers in some parts of the country, especially in Mindanao, to ensure na walang security threat at kung meron man ay may stop ito in time for the SONA. Diyan sa Senate Bonds, ano yung mga preparations or ano yung mga inaasahan natin?
Okay, so yung second, just like the House, the second regular session dito of the 19th Congress will open at 10 a.m. So senators are starting to arrive here and here at the Senate in Pasay City. So lahat ng senador are expected to attend. So important context also here is this is the first State of the Nation address since the pandemic na wala ng restriction. So if you can recall, over the weekend, nilip ni President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. yung state of emergency, public health emergency sa bansa. So even the media, they are no longer required to wear their face mask. Kung maaalala nyo last year, nakasuot pa rin sila ng face mask. And then of course, after ng opening ng session, dediretso tayo, yung mga media dito, and even yung mga senators, pupunta kami sa House para naman tumutok sa pagde-deliver ng second State of the Nation address ni President Ferdinand Marcos. Yes, Bea.
Siguro nagtataka kayo kung bakit umabot ng 2,000. I mean, hindi kayong dalawa, pero yung mga nanonood, kung bakit umaabot ng 2,000 and nasa 300 plus lang yung House of Representatives, members of the House, and then the Senate, of course, has only 24 members. And that's because during the SONA, bukod sa legislators of the 19th Congress, Yung people who will be attending, of course, include the Marcos cabinet, top government officials under the Marcos admin, and also the diplomatic corps. So you'll have ambassadors, or for some countries, I think officials based in their home countries who happen to be here, who happen to be here visiting, will also be listening to the State of the Nation address. So SONA kami ng SONA, salita kami ng salita about the SONA. What is the SONA in the first place? So the SONA, State of the Nation, in President Marcos's own words, it's a progress report, status report, kung kamusta na ang bansa. But you have to understand, this is the status as delivered by the president. So this is the status of the country, progress report of the country, of the administration, from his perspective. So part din dito is the angling or the way that the president, not just President Marcos, but any president, wants to project his administration, his or her administration to the Philippines. So in the SONA is basically the president laying out his plan, setting forth his vision for the country. Kung last year, yung parang pinaka-inaabang natin sa SONA, because Marcos, the candidate, didn't quite expound on his stands on various issues, his plans for the Philippines. So in a way, the inauguration and then the SONA a month later was the first time that we actually heard in not even detail, but in more less vague terms, his vision for the country. Of course, in the past 12 months, mas nagpo-progress na yung kung ano ba talaga yung nitty-gritty na yun. For example, in terms of foreign policy, it was a big question mark before what his stand would be during the SONA. He said his memorable quote that he would not give an inch to any foreign threat. It is translated into the foreign policy na a friend to all, enemy to none. So we're friendly with the two superpowers competing in the world order right now, so China and the US and things like that. Also during the Congress, pinag-uusapan namin din kanina yung priority legislation. Typically during the SONA, the president lists down kung ano yung mga batas na gusto niya, he wants Congress to pass. Now, earlier, pinag-usapan na din to actually the LEDAC, yung Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council. That's shared by Marcos, but also it counts House leaders and Senate leaders as its members. They already pointed out 20 priority measures. So we expect some of those to be mentioned during the SONA. And we also expect some of the 19 bills that he laid out last time to be mentioned again sa SONA na to kasi hindi na naipasa yung mga batas. Siguro just to point out some of the proposed legislation or the bills that he wants Congress to push that could be or are controversial. The LEDAC decided that mandatory ROTC and LSTP is still a priority. Yung dati na parang, kumbaga ito lang yung personality ni President Marcos for a bit, he was fixated on right-sizing we haven't really seen progress in terms of right-sizing, yung supposed right-sizing that he wants, e-governance, so we haven't seen that. So again, going back to my point earlier, a lot of the SONA is image crafting. So based on his speech last year, Marcos tried to paint himself as what he envisions a modern statesman to be. So yun yung mga legislation to modernize Philippine government and Philippine governance. But at the same time, if you recall, meron din he harkens back to the past. In obviously ROTC, bringing ROTC back and making that mandatory, and also making mentions of the past, as in the dictator past, the past, the Philippines under his late father, his namesake, and the dictator. So that's very interesting in terms of how Marcos balances the SONA out. So yun, basically the SONA is the president giving a status report based on how he perceives their achievements to be, as well as pushing his allies in Congress, a supermajority Congress, to basically fall in line and pass the legislation that he thinks will further his agenda for the country. Now, speaking of that super majority, Dwight, Bonz, legislation that actually made it past the 19th Congress in the first year of the Marcos presidency. Nabanggit na ni Nabanggit yung dalawa actually kanina yung mga napasa at hindi naipasa. Pero I wanna zoom out and kasi na-mention nila yung nitty-gritty, no, kung anong napasa, anong hindi. What does a supermajority mean, or what is a supermajority coming to mean under a President Marcos? Bonz, you wanna go first?
Actually, we saw in the sweet passage of the Maharlika bill when this was filed in January, and during the hearings, it did not have numbers. Like only a number of senators supported the bill, and yet came May, it received 19 votes, with only Senator Risa Hontiveros casting negative vote. Then 3 were not present. So yeah, alliances are really, sorry, paligpasin lang natin yung troll. Okay, alliances are really important. So not only in the House that we have a supermajority, even in the Senate, the chamber that often prides itself as being the more independent House. So nakita nga natin yung pagkakaroon ng supermajority even dito sa Senado. So alliances are really important, as I said, because it will help them in pushing for bills. So we've seen that is a challenge for the minority bloc. It's composed primarily of 2 members, Senator Risa Hontiveros and Senator Coco Pimentel. Of course, one example I could think of is their push for SOGI bill. So it's been languishing in the Senate. The last update is it's reverted back to the committee levels. And then itong ROTC Act din, maganda din itong tingnan kung ano mangyayari dito. Still pending for second reading. So kung maaalala nyo, Vice President Sara Duterte has been pushing for the ROTC bill na gawing mandatory ito para sa ating mga estudyante. So senators are not really supportive of this because they're saying that it is not really needed, and yung kailangan talaga is strengthen natin yung NSTP law. So ayun, nakita natin yung ganitong dynamics dito sa Senado. Para sa iyo naman, Dwight.
So parang 20... Go ahead, Dwight.
Okay. Well, it makes the president's job easier, pero it could also be a liability. So bakit easier? Kasi well, the president mentioned nung SONA niya 20 priority measures, then it was eventually expanded to 42 nung sinama na yung mga priority measures tagged by the LEDAC. So 33 out of 42, that's a big number, and for the House of Representatives na ipasa. So that's sort of like that is because of the ties of the president to Congress, to the House of Representatives. Remember na ang Speaker of the House is the cousin of President Marcos, itong si Speaker Martin Romualdez. So that's just one factor. But we also have to take note that out of these 42 priority measures, eventually, 5 lang yung napirmahan patungong batas. Ibig sabihin, sa isang taon na yon, yung 19 Congress, well, mostly because only a few of these 33 measures na napasa ng House ay sinigundahan o inaprubahan din ng Senate. So it's a liability in the sense na bakit kung may supermajority ka sa Congress, bakit in the end ganito lang kaunti yung priority measures na naipasa mo? Of course, the public is expecting reforms, changes that they can actually feel. And sa isang taon na to, kung ang napasa mo lang, let's say, resetting or rescheduling of the barangay elections, is that really the kind of legislation that the public will really feel the difference? Kasi yung rescheduling of the barangay polls, eventually it was declared unconstitutional in the Supreme Court. So this is a supermajority that inintay pa rin natin kung gaano magiging ka-effective in the coming years. And itong inaasahan nga natin sa SONA ay mag-aapela si President Marcos sa mga mambabatas na ipasa yung kanyang mga priority measures, yung kanyang pet bills, at least before the end of the year.
Yeah. I think one thing that's very interesting is, kumbaga, we do expect Maharlika to be a major component of this speech. After all, like Bonz and Dwight mentioned, this fed to the House. Medyo slow start, but then at the end, right before suspend yung session, it flew by the Senate as well. The interesting part here is Maharlika wasn't even mentioned during the first SONA. Out of the blue, sumulpot na lang siya towards the end of 2022, and yet within a quarter, within half, 2 quarters at least, rather, naipasa siya and we do expect it. But again, though, yung backdrop din siguro dito, no, surveys indicate that, well, a Pulse Asia survey indicates that the top priority of Filipinos is inflation, controlling the prices of goods. And this goes back to President Marcos because at the end of the day, he's the agriculture chief. The supply and prices of goods is essentially his job to monitor on top of his being president. So, to wrap this discussion up, kasi magsisimula na nga yung session ng both chambers of Congress, maybe let's talk about what we look forward to as reporters covering these branches of government, the executive in my case and the legislative in your case, and also as Filipino citizens. Maybe Dwight go first.
Speaker Martin Romualdez said over the weekend, he acknowledged that some of the promises that the President Marcos made during his first SONA were not yet fulfilled or wala pa doon. It's not yet there, yung mga objectives. Now I'm curious how President Marcos will phrase that. Kasi last year, nandun yung mga pangako or nandun yung mga priority measures. Now that some of them, if not many of them, are still pending, hindi pa siya napapasa or hindi pa naisa sa katuparan yung kanyang vision for the Philippines, how will he address the public patungkol sa mga vision na yon na hanggang ngayon pending pa rin? Second, I am curious, katulad nga ng sinabi mo, yung Maharlika Fund, hindi naman siya nabanggit sa persona and lumitaw na rin lang siya. I'm curious sa mga bagay na hindi masasabi patungkol dito sa SONA na to, na eventually, later in the year, ma-realize natin that it's a priority of the Marcos administration or it's something that they're actually looking forward to. And third, I am curious if the State of the Nation address will be another attempt by the Marcos administration or President Marcos to sort of rehabilitate the Marcos image. We know that the president is the dictator's son, and while 1 year has passed and sort of parang naging normal na that we're living under the Marcos presidency, it is a fact that cannot be denied, and it is we're all curious if he will use this platform, this important platform, to freshen up the image of his family. Ikaw, Bonz.
Siguro sinabi mo, Dwight, yung mga nililook forward mo dito sa SONA. Siguro yung akin naman, i-share ko yung mga nililook forward ko sa dito nga sa bagong pagbubukas ng Congress. So it would be interesting actually if new alliances will be formed, especially that the midterm election is approaching. May mga magka-comeback ba? So sino yung mga tatakbo? May mga nagpapabango na ba ng mga politiko na gustong bumalik sa Senado? I'm also looking forward to the dynamics of the senators inside. Will there be changes? Will Senate President needs to be stay in his power? Matatapos na ba itong 6 years na to sa pagiging Senate President? So, yun, yung mga gusto kong abangan dito sa bagong pagbubukas ng Congress. So, that's all for me. What about you, Bea?
Okay, 3 things also kasi na-inspire ako sa pag-summarize niya into bullet points. First, the economy, like I unmute myself. There you go. 3 things. So first, the economy, like I mentioned, inflation is the top priority. Next to inflation, yung jobs. So all of these are jobs and wages. So these are the top concerns of the Filipino people. At the same time, hindi lang siya na clearly the Marcos administration knows this kasi parang it has also been a common talking point, not just for the president himself, but also the economic managers, managing the prices of goods, yung wages ng manggagawa. Tapos yun na, again, all these matters. The question here is, will the legislation that he will push later, will this reflect the need or the pressure or the desire of Filipinos to see the Marcos administration better control inflation? Although his numbers based on the survey have improved, like in terms of how people perceive the admin to be doing that particular job well, it's been improving. But again, earlier this year, we saw prices shoot up dramatically. Again, under Marcos, not just as president, but also as agriculture chief. Second, nabanggit nito ni Bonz earlier, yung politics, right? Again, a super majority. This super majority didn't happen out of the blue. It stems from the Unity Coalition of 2022, a hodgepodge of all the big names, all the infamous names in Philippine politics. And while that catapulted both Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte to power easily, more or less, diba? Parang it was a walk in the park in the 2022 elections. It also means that the Marcos administration needs to balance a lot of interests. And I think and a lot of egos as well in that mix of very powerful and very ambitious uh, allies. And finally, yung identity of a Marcos presidency. Kasi kung last time, the first SONA, the question was, what is his vision for the country? I think the question still remains, but I guess entering year two, what is his identity as president? White mentioned this earlier, no, na parang it is clearly a concern, na parang we are or the administration is slowly but surely rehabilitating or erasing uh, the reality of the first Marcos presidency or the harsh truth of the first Marcos presidency. But at the same time, you wonder kung ano bang identity na kinakaraft ni Marcos Jr. He can't just be Marcos Jr., the son of the dictator. Uh, I'm sure as a person and as a president, he wants to craft his own image. And I think a lot of experts are saying that he hasn't yet been able to do this, partly because of the coalitions that propped him into Malacanang, that boosted him straight into the highest position in the Philippines. So that will be interesting where that goes. If will he be more assertive? Will he be more distinctive in the second year? Will he use the SONA as an opportunity to kumbaga hard launch that identity of the second Marcos president? So those are things that are going through my mind. And also to touch on identity and economy, he's been traveling a lot. In fact, after tomorrow on the 25th, he flies to Malaysia for a state visit. He's been traveling all over the world. In 2023 alone, Malaysia will be his sixth country na he'll visit. He's been to, this year alone, he's been to the US, he's been to Japan, China, he's been to Switzerland. So the pressure there obviously is, ano ba yung makukuha ng Pilipino doon? And again, it also ties to inflation, right? Like, if he's traveling, costs obviously are high whenever a president travels, not just President Marcos, but any president who travels, that incurs a lot of costs. So, ano yung ROI? Because he has been highlighting that na don't focus daw on the travel, focus on the potential ROI of these trips. And where is that ROI? So, the first year, you might argue honeymoon period yun for the Marcos administration. Year two, I'm not sure if the honeymoon will extend to more than 12 months. We'll see how he'll do on that front. So again, economy, politics, and his identity as president. And that's it for us three. Again, at Batasan, all the way in Pasay City. Bonz will be joining us later. Lilipad yan. All the way from Pasay, lilipad yan papuntang Quezon City sa Commonwealth para samahan kami dito at President Marcos delivers his second State of the Nation address. Again, you have been watching Rappler. I'm Bea. Joining me earlier was Bonz and Dwight. Keep it on Rappler. In a few minutes, we will be actually live streaming yung opening ng session both at the Senate and the House of Representatives, and then keep it further on Rappler because we do have a live updates page on the website, and at 3 p.m. tune into Rappler's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter accounts. We will have a panel discussion talking about the pertinent issues ahead of the State of the Nation address. Of course, the State of the Nation address mismo will be broadcast live on Rappler. So it's going to be a very, very long day for all of us here and for anyone who cares this much about Philippine politics. So keep it here, and we'll see you later today. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.